Yo guys, what is up? Jerome here, and today we are talking about the class that won Phase 1. The class that was the strongest throughout the phase and everything from DPS to gold making and PvP as well. Which class is it? It'll help you to decide which ult to make, of course, but also it should tell us which class might just snowball to be the very best in Phase 2. It's a big video, so let's get right to it. So to get started, we're going to be ranking the very best DPS in the phase from a tier system from C to S, because we have all the existing Warcraft logs data to tell us which classes are the strongest. And then after that, we're also going to talk about the very best gold makers as well. Some classes like mages have incredible gold making potential right now that shouldn't be overlooked. We're also going to round out the tier list by talking about the strongest PvP classes as well, because PvP and Season of Discovery is a huge content pillar that everybody wants to be a part of. So to get started with the C tier, we're going to start with Priest. Now I'm sure you're going to say I'm just putting Priest in the C tier because I play Priest myself, but you've got to hear me out first. Priest is really bad in PvE right now for raid DPS, so much so that people don't even bring them to the raid. You have terrible single target damage, you have terrible AoE damage, your Mind Seer doesn't even do damage to the target it's cast on, so basically everything dies before it even does any damage. Now, while I will admit that Priest is very overpowered for raid healing and for PvP healing as well right now, they're really bad at anything involving killing mobs. Most people in the game, they want to play the hero class. They want to do all the damage, they want to kill the mobs, they want to farm the gold, everything that Priest is really bad at doing. Because of that, for the final strength ranking for Phase 1, I'm putting Priest in the B tier. Moving on to the next class in the B tier, we have the Shaman. The thing about the Shaman is, yes, you have the very best tanking spec, extremely overpowered tank spec, but the Ellie Shaman does horrible damage, and the Enhancement Shaman isn't much better either. The problem is that translates very poorly to anything involving open world farming or even PvP. Phase 2, you're going to be doing a ton more damage, but right now in Phase 1, you're just not bringing it. Plus, you're not very good at gold farming, and sure, Shaman flag runners are great, but if you see a lot of Shamans on your team in Warsong, you kind of feel like you're going to lose. Just for that reason, they're going in the B tier for Phase 1, but I'm sure they're going to be so much stronger next phase that I'm already working on my own Shaman ult. So the first class in the A tier is going to be the Warlocks. So Warlocks do the most caster damage in BFD right now, which does have to count for something. They also bring very high utility, which will only get better. They have their Curse of Wreck, of course, the Hellstones, the Soul Stones if you're one of those groups that actually dies once in a while in BFD. The thing is, they're always going to get a guaranteed spot in any of these 10-man raids, especially with Curse of Wreck. Ultimately, they just don't do as much damage as physical damage dealers though, and that's likely not going to be resolved next phase either. As gold farmers, they can pretty much solo any mob they want in the game, and they can also do things like solo RFK farm as well. I've also seen a ton of gold making potential for summons. People are getting away with charging 1.5 gold for TB summons right now, which is insane. That being said, they've kind of fallen behind a little bit over time in PvP. So much so that I didn't see a single Warlock in any of the Warsong games I watched in the recent Warsong tournament. Overall for this phase, I'm giving Warlock an A ranking. So moving into the next entry in the A tier is the Mage. So Mages are already the second best caster in the raid beside Warlocks. That being said, their AoE is completely bonkers. And at the same time, Arcane Mages have been a very pleasant surprise for healing, much better than most of us anticipated. Mages can already one-pull Wailing Caverns, which is just insane considering they're only level 25. With their full toolkit in Phase 2, Mages might well be the most toxic gold farmers in WoW history. And in PvP, you might think they weren't that great in Phase 1, but the very coordinated teams abused them heavily to win a recent Warsong tournament. Once they get all their toolkit online, they're going to be complete menaces next phase. But for Phase 1, I'm giving Mages a final A ranking. Up next in the A tier is the Druid. So we all know Druids are required right now for raids with their Wild Strike's Wind Fury buff. In fact, some guilds are even bringing 2 Druids because they have such a high melee stack. And on top of their buffs, they are extremely competitive on the meters on pretty much every single fight. The only real complaint for Pharaohs right now is that they're the weakest tanks, but that should really change next phase. As for gold farming, because they have so much single target damage, they're really strong gold farmers. That being said, they still do fall behind classes like the Hunters and the Mages. Though if you do want to dominate, there really isn't anything stronger right now for leveling or for PvP than Boomkin. To prove that, I made a random pug in the trade chat with just Boomkins and we won every single game in like 5 minutes. Overall, I'm giving Druid an A ranking for the first phase. We also can't forget the Ret Paladin, which is a very strong class in Phase 1. In raids, they're extremely high single target damage, the AoE kings next to mages as well. As for gold farming, they're more middle of the pack, however in PvP they are dominant. Still one of my least favorite classes to run into on my druid when I'm flag carrying, and sometimes my priest can even get one-shot by them as well. For Phase 1, Paladin comfortably gets an A rating. Alright, rounding out the A tier, we have Warrior. Now, not many people expected Warrior to dominate in Phase 1 in PvE, but they have done just that. Of course, they have the deep wounds, they have all their utility, their Sunder, their battle shout. They are just an absolute menace on the meters right now. As for gold making though, they're really not in that upper echelon, and that does bring them down quite a bit if you do want to have a warrior as an ult. One thing you can do very effectively would be some kind of warrior priest farm. So for example, you're doing the Murlocs in Hillsbrad and you have a priest healing you at the same time. Also, it is worth noting in PvP, they are much weaker than a lot of us would have anticipated. All they can do right now is hamstring, though next phase with Mortal Strike, they're going to be a completely different animal. For Phase 1 though, it is a pleasant surprise to put them in the A tier. So the runner-up for the best class in Phase 1 goes to Rogue. If you look at the Warcraft logs data, yes, the very best warriors outperform rogues. Rogues are in general, it's seemingly a more consistent performer, at least if your skill level is not at the very highest level. If you couple that with the fact that in PvP right now, they basically only lose 1v1s to 2 classes in the game, it is a little bit upsetting to know that they're going to be so much better next phase. With that being said, their final ranking for Phase 1 is S tier. Alright, so let's get into the number 1 class in Phase 1. So yes, Hunter is not the number 1 DPS in raids anymore, and a lot of people would say, you should stop talking about nerfing Hunters, they're not overpowered anymore. But you've got to factor in the fact that yes, they are a top 3, top 4 performer in raids, but they're also the very best gold farmer next to mages. Hunters can basically kill anything in the game right now. For example, when I was doing my Furbog medicine pouch farm, I basically stacked the entire group with Hunters to make it go way faster. As for PvP, next to Boomkin and Priest, there really isn't anything more annoying. That's especially concerning considering next phase with Bestial Wrath, Hunter pets are going to get even stronger. For now though, Hunters get to enjoy their top spot as the kings of Phase 1. I'm curious what you think was the strongest class in Phase 1. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. And if you want a bunch of Phase 2 prep guides that I'm working on right now, make sure to subscribe and like the video as well. And then check out my leveling guide to level way faster, full of very broken mechanics that Blizzard likely nerfs next phase. One last thing is that I was going to announce this, but I'm testing memberships for 2024. And to my surprise, some people have already generously subscribed and become members. I'd like to personally shout out Attila David, Just Another Joe, Flax456, Boombox60, and Jeff Fisto. Thank you so much for your support and keeping the channel pumping. If you want to get a special shout out in an upcoming video, click my profile and join today and become a member and get even more awesome perks.